So outer space governance is a global challenge, one that needs international, intersectoral cooperation. It's important that we think about outer space governance now because the pace of the activities in outer space and the technological change is faster than the pace of governance. In particular, I'm interested in the protection and preservation of cultural and natural heritage on other celestial planets. There's a real risk that if we don't act fast to protect natural and cultural heritage on the moon, some of the sites that are so important for the history of humanity and because of their ecological significance or their environmental significance might be destroyed in the new age of exploration of the moon. I think in governance it's really important to think about the relation between science and policy making, but doing so in a way in which the wider public is not cut out of the picture. It's important that in relation to outer space, we have a shorter and closer link between the scientists that make some of the, that create some of the recommendations, for example, for planetary protection and the UN mechanisms. But also it's important that in general, multilateral organizations keep into account how to invite lesser heard voices and underrepresented communities to have their say in relation to issues of the commons that are of importance to everyone. So how do we have an understanding of what does it mean to benefit humanity with space activities unless different constituencies that make up humanity are interrogated and heard in the processes? What I'm interested in is to look at how underrepresented communities and marginalized voices can shape and have shaped some of the debates around what is harm and what needs protection in relation to outer space. For example, in the debate around dark skies, indigenous leaders have been very vocal about the importance of protecting dark skies because the stars are important to their cultural heritage and to their sense of community identity. It is very important that these voices and these conversations trickle into the world of policy making and that these communities are represented and heard when we are thinking about more equitable outer space governance. So I am interested in comparison between different mechanisms of governance, particularly environmental governance. On Earth, we have a number of mechanisms to protect environments. One of them, which is relatively recent, is the creation of UNESCO geoparks. Geoparks protect geological heritage on our planet. But they're an interesting analog to think through because one of the things that geoparks do is that they bring together interests in environmental features of very unique parts of our planet with an emphasis on understanding their cultural importance and their role in sustainable development as a whole. What is interesting about them also is that geoparks are a bottom-up mechanism for protecting areas. And if we think about the moon that way, we can think about like the creation of coalition among different constituencies of our planet that are interested in the protection of some of the features of the moon. And we can encourage and support their agency in protecting exactly those sites of scientific interest or cultural heritage or environmentally unique features. Mistrust can really hinder the sharing of information. And information sharing is fundamental to keep our planet safe. If we think about outer space and the fact that we need to track objects around our planet and the possibility of collisions that might happen because they create the chance that some of the debris can fall on our planet, then we understand how important it is that different space agencies and different actors, including private actors, have good flows of information sharing. It's fundamental for the safety of our planet. So the governance of outer space really requires input from science, and there are mechanisms through which scientific communities create evidence that supports governance. That's, for example, the case of the Committee for Space Research and, for example, the Planetary Protection Panel that looks at how to protect the planet from contamination or protect other celestial bodies from potential contamination that could come from Earth. This is really important, and it is important to strengthen the link between the scientific communities and the scientific evidence and the policy making. However, that's not enough, because even the scientific committees end up being quite technocratic and speaking a language that most people feel alienated from. So what we really need is to strengthen that link between science and policy making, but to also triangulate that with better input and more participatory mechanisms through which civil society, different communities can have their say into policy making about outer space.